Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV, live again from Charlotte, North Carolina, where we are on Radio Row. It is Media Day for FSU, I'll tell you that. Mike Norvell joining the local media this morning, and, that's a rather subdued interaction. We'll talk about the juxtaposition between that interaction and the one in which Mike was on the dais for the collected media, not just the local media, and demeanor, talking points, all of it. It's something that obviously I was eagerly anticipating, given the fact that he's going to want to push forward, talk about the upcoming season, talk about camp starting. By the way, we have a start date on that. We know exactly when Florida State starts practice now. Mike Norvell revealing that this morning. Knowing his desire to move forward with this, but also having to answer the questions, the many questions today. And this is a long process for these coaches. I watch, every year I'm here, but I watched it again yesterday. I'm reminded of it. First, before we get out the gates here, I'm Jeff, Tom here as well. Again, I'm from Charlotte, so if you get some sound quality issues, bear with us, but we're on Radio Row, surrounded by other radio hosts doing a lot of talking and a lot of interviews. We will be doing some of those interviews in just a little bit. In fact, at the time that you're watching this, we're having to tape segments so that I can do these interviews during the time in which the show would be running or beyond. So the first one out the gates will be Tommy Castellanos. But as always, I thank you for tuning in and listening on 93.3 FM there in Tallahassee, the only locally owned and operated radio station in Tallahassee. And I thank you, as always, for watching on Warchant TV on the YouTube feed there. We appreciate you. You get to see my very colorful shirt today if you're watching on YouTube TV. It's a beautiful shirt, really, and I found a perfect hat to match. So there's that, and we appreciate it. Now, Tom, let's get started. I thought Norvell was interesting in that he addressed everything from Castellanos' comments to who they expect to get back in camp from the kids that missed in the spring to the start of camp, which is going to be Wednesday. Players report on Tuesday. So here we are in less than a week. Players are reporting on Tuesday. Practice begins on Wednesday. Yes, he's ready for that practice. And it's a little bit of a carryover from what we heard at the start of spring camp. That is to say, he was pushing to elevate the standard and to compete and to get guys to want to work every single day and fight for everything. And, the theme, I think, is obviously derived from the fact that they had none of that a year ago. They didn't have any of it. There was no fight. There was no heart. There was no effort. And he has continued to push that. And, he got animated after he had met with the local media here when he was on the dais, and he talked about not wanting sidekicks and wanting guys who were just ready to fight and compete every day. That's the message, because I'll tell you something else that stands out. When he talks about players, whether the ones that they invited here or the newcomers, because he gets asked about that a lot. Which are the guys, who are the leaders that are emerging? Which are the guys that you believe you can trust in, believe in to kind of pound home the message that we've got to compete on a play-to-play basis, that you're going to have good days and bad days and ups and downs, but it can never be that you don't fight and compete on the next play. And so he, when he talks about which players, he's mentioned a handful of guys that I think he believes in, and he's utilized their leadership to try to get this message across to players. And one of them I'm going to speak to in just a little bit. I did have a chance to sit and listen to his interview, and I was standing there by the table as he talked. Tom, to me, there's no question that one of the big-time leaders on this team is Richie Leonard. It's Richie Leonard, and it's Richie Leonard numero uno. He is the guy. It's not, and this is not to take away from anybody else that might want to service that role or be part of that. He talked about Richie Leonard as a kid who has a ton of heart, embodies service, comes to work, doesn't get involved in the nonsense, keeps guys on track. And then you listen to Richie Leonard, and he sounds like a 40-something-year-old man who's had a full career and a husband and a wife and paid down the mortgage and done the responsible thing his whole life. He He was an impressive young man today when he talked a lot about how I was never going to leave this program at 2-10, and he mentioned some things about wanting guys to know what it's like to win, to feel what it's like to win, to be desperate to do those things. He also talked about some of the players that we are excited about in the future, Tom, which I really enjoyed. He singled out, did Richie Leonard, Andre Otto. So, we've talked to Otto. That seems to make sense. He singled him out. Another guy on this team that is clearly going to be a leader, and I love that these two individuals are on the offensive line, Pettibon. And Pettibon is talked about an awful lot by other offensive linemen, by the defensive line. Daryl Jackson brought him up today, Tom. Pettibon was singled out by Mike Norvell as well. So I think if you're looking for two guys that they view as competitors and leaders, they're two offensive linemen. I like that. I want to hear that.
Yeah, I agree too. Well, I mean, obviously that's going to have to be the anchor of this team in a lot of ways, not just the offense, but the anchor of the team because of the approach that Florida State's going to take. I think all of the dominoes fall based upon, for this season, how Florida State succeeds or fails based upon the ability to run the football. I mean, some years I think the defensive front seven, or in this case with Tony White, the front six, sets the tone for a team. But for 2025 Florida State, I think everything about how the season is going to turn out relies on, do you control the football? Are you successful on the ground? Or do you impose your will physically, which means do you have time of possession control? Are you setting the pace that you want to set? Is it breakneck? Is it slower? The offensive line, I think, is the segment group that's the largest key this season. And they had already co-signed on Richie Leonard's leadership status by sending him to the ACC kickoff in the first place. It seems like, yeah, what you're saying and some of the comments that I watched on Warchant TV, because we do have those interviews, you could see why people would gravitate towards him. They need more of that. I do kind of balk at Mike Norvell's talk about, well, we needed the help last year. We needed extra team-building activities. Man, there were no whispers about that until it went bad. So I kind of balk at that part of it. I'm not saying that he's not being genuine when he's comparing last year's group and this year's group in terms of team chemistry. But I don't know, man. There weren't many whispers about all that kind of stuff before the season started in Dublin.
Well, it's a bit of a catch-22. I think he's stuck there, Tom, because let's say it's 100% true. Let's take him at his word that there were a lot of team-building events that were forced because they were necessary. That's the quote you're referencing. He hasn't had to do it as much this year because of the leadership of a couple of these transfers and a guy like Richie Leonard who's now been here for a few years, but a couple of years. The thing I'd say is if it was true, we wouldn't know about it. I don't think they would talk about it. I don't think they would say, hey, by the way, I know we're really excited for the season, but it could be shaky. These guys don't seem to like each other. Like he's not. I know what you're saying, that you would learn of it maybe a little bit.
I think we would have heard something that these guys hate each other. That didn't seem to be any kind of a whisper last year. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It's tough too. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you reveal that there were real problems, it seems self-evident, but it also sounds like excuse making. If you decide to ignore that and just try to talk your way through the impossible, which is how in the world did you go 2-10? It's going to sound like empty rhetoric. I don't know. I think this exercise is tough for a coach who's gone through what he has been through. Now that's, self-inflicted. I mean, I'm not saying he's a victim here, but I am saying it's impossible to talk about because you're not going to ever be able to say, look, these three kids sabotaged the locker room and then I lost them and I couldn't get them back. Did you see where Loxley, Maryland's coach, admitted he lost the locker room?
No, did he really?
Quote unquote. He talked about it. Yeah, it's front page news, man. He said that, and listen, I'm telling you, this is important because this is the kind of thing we're going to watch in college football. He said that he, quote, lost the locker room in 2024 over which players to compensate, a factor that led to the Terrapins' worst season since his debut in 2019. They finished 4-8, by the way. And he said that, I own the fact that I lost my locker room, which is crazy to say. I had to choose between paying young players who were coming in or reward the older players that have been through the fire, 3 bowl wins, and I tried to do both with limited resources, and that's what you get, a locker room with the haves and have-nots. I commend him for saying it. I think it's indicative of where the sport is right now. It is a constant conversation. We had it yesterday on the show where I said that I thought it was very difficult to build the sort of chemistry and locker room bonds and camaraderie. And these are all other ways of saying culture. It's very difficult now, especially if you build, as Florida State has, through, mercenaries, paid assassins. I got no problem with it. I got no problem with the kids being paid. I got no problem with utilizing the portal to make your team better. How could I? They went 12-0, followed it up with an ACC championship game win, got them to 13. Obviously, you could then say that part of the problem when the snub happened is that guys had already been paid, checked out, said, have a good one, I'm off to the NFL, and they didn't show up and didn't bother to play in the game against Georgia and got blown out. You could have indicated that might be a problem of future issues with culture in the locker room. We couldn't have known to what extent, but I do think it's indicative of what's happening in college football right now, and this is maybe harder than ever. And why do I say all that? Well, because the other part of what Mike talked about this morning was that, and you can tell, I think that he believes this and he is attacking this. The CEO role that he now possesses, I think he's come around to the idea, Tom, that that's the way a head coach has to be in the modern era, given these set of circumstances. Because you can better have your hand on the pulse of what's happening with individuals, with segment groups, with your other coaches, when you're not obsessed with the offense, comings and goings, failings and winnings. When you are now the guy that oversees it all and can figure out, hey, you know what? Something not clicking over there with the linebackers. This is a bad week for them. I can't let this slip through the cracks as I try to figure out, how I can teach this concept on offense. I instead got to go in there and talk to these guys individually. I got to talk to the coach. I got to talk to these guys until I figure out what's what. And listen, I've been in favor of that. I told you I had a moment where, as a college football fan for years, I hated those that delegated as head coaches, guys that we used to make fun of, like Dabo Swinney, who were not the X's and O's guys, right? That, I always kind of admired that Steve Spurrier called the plays for Florida all those years. And so when you saw offensive success, you're like, well, there's one man to give credit to there. It's his offense. And I love that Mike did that, right? When we were having success with less, he was the play caller. And I remember thinking, well, that's awesome. That's our head coach is game day active, doing things that affect wins and losses. And I felt like you should do that as the guy making the most amount of money. But then, over time, I've kind of seen where they get pulled in a million directions. Yep. And I don't know that they can do any one of those things all that well. They have to kind of be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so to me, I like Norvell in this role. I don't know if he's going to succeed. I don't know if he can climb out from under the weight of the suck of 2-10, because it is an awfully tall task. And I would say the odds are against it. It's not impossible, but I think it's likely that the odds are against him. I want to see it play out, though. It will be fascinating. I do like that he's attacking it that way, and I do think it gives him the best chance to put his finger on the pulse of the team, a pulse that he could not find a year ago.
Well, yeah, I agree. On the background part of it with the offensive success and being, a mastermind, there's a couple of ways to look at Norvell's career as a play caller, and you have to tie Memphis into, the early seasons at Florida State where he was creative and he was successful, and there's no equivocation with what he did at Memphis. And then he was at Florida State, but then what seemed to happen was in 2013. When they took away the jab, which was whatever early down runs he wanted to call, he looked kind of stuck in 2023. And that was a good offense. I mean, in terms of overall skill and talent, he had a lot to work with, and yet he seemed awfully confused, which was strange because he had little to nothing to work with in 2021, and he drew blood from a stone with Jordan Travis legs. And then in 2022, for my money, I think you would agree, that's the best offense that we've had under Mike Norvell at Florida State. Mm-hmm. That was balanced. You didn't know what was coming. And then even if they ran counter for some reason, it continued to work and create explosive plays. 23 was kind of stagnant for as much talent as they had. 24 was a total unmitigated disaster. And it could be right. It's as good a theory as any that the clutter, all of the stuff that you have to do in the modern times of being a head coach, makes you focus less on the thing that made you who you are, which is, calling plays and coming up with something on a 3rd and 6 where they go, how the hell did he call that play? Where did that come from? You lose that creativity. What you're hoping for in this situation, obviously, and he's hoping for, is that you have the inverse happening with Gus Malzahn. That Gus had been so weighed down at Auburn at the back half of his time. He was so weighed down at UCF that he couldn't just get in a room and think about, all right, how do I make this deficit into a strength? How do I call something that breaks a tendency? That's the goal here. He did seem, and you could tell me from being in the room, but just from looking at it on Warchant TV, he looked pretty well rested. We usually judge coaches early on for their first comments, either whether it's here in Tallahassee for the fall camp kickoff interview or the ones in Charlotte or North Carolina for ACC kickoff. There were years with Jimbo we thought, oh, my God, he had a rough offseason, or, oh, my Lord, he clearly doesn't feel prepared for game one. On balance versus his previous 5 seasons here, Mike looks okay. He looks like he's in a pretty good spot.
Looked really healthy. Looked like a guy who's, taking care of himself. I think that's an astute observation by you, Tom. I don't think there's any doubt. He walked in the room, and I felt that way. He looks lean. He looks rested. A little backdrop for you here. It's one of the reasons we come to these events. Kind of fun. So I decided to go out and about on the town last night in Charlotte, and it's not what you think. I wasn't out there boozing it up or anything like that. I did have a couple of Guinness. But that said, I was walking around and looking at some of the more historical areas of Charlotte. And then, you know me, Tom, I'm a walker. I'll get out there, buddy. I'll walk 10, 12, 15 miles. I don't care.
I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm walking the whole damn city. A couple times I walked myself into areas that I probably shouldn't have walked. And then I made my way back around. But anyhow, the point is, I stopped in and I found little cool cafes and restaurants and bars and places that I hadn't seen in Charlotte before until I wanted to get to the central. Tryon Street is the big street here in Charlotte that you kind of, surrounded by restaurants and bodegas and all these different things. So I kind of came my way back down because I knew, Tom, before the night was over, I was going to have to find my way for one last pint at Connolly's. And but I wanted a good meal. I wanted to go somewhere. So I'm waiting across the street to go to this restaurant that I've settled on. And I look up, and it's Mike Norvell, it's Derek, the SID, and it's the 4 players that are here in Charlotte. And they're on the other side of the street, and we're just staring at each other. And I will let you know, and this will make you envious and everybody back in Tallahassee envious, it's crazy. It was 84 degrees yesterday here. It's somehow we got this overcast sky and a slight breeze. So when you come from Tallahassee at 98 and humid, you can imagine how I was loving life at dusk, and it's 84, 83, and it's got a slight breeze, and the humidity's out of the air. And we're just looking across at each other, and the walk sign lights up. There's all these cars at a red light. We meet right in the middle of the street, shake hands. Good to see you. How are you? Safe trip? Yeah, great. See you tomorrow? Yeah, the whole little, sir, yes, all of that. And then I realized they were going to Ruth's Chris. So they had themselves a bunch of steak. And the man that looked rested is well fed too, because I asked him this morning, how was your steak? And he said it was delicious, Jeff. So they had a good night. Their night on the town was a steakhouse. Mine was considerably cheaper, but by choice, because I wanted some fish and a Guinness, and I enjoyed. But that's what we ended up with.
Well, so what do you make of, because clearly this was a calculated 1-2 punch he delivered today. And between, your interview, which I love that interview. I wish I was in the room for that one because I think it's the best one he does all year long.
It is.
There's usually one press conference, a Monday press conference a year when you don't go 2-10, where Norvell is pretty good. You're like, oh, okay, it's not cliche city today. He brought something or he had something. But I love that local media breakout because it's so relaxed in the room. It is a setting where he feels comfortable. He sits down and he shoots from the hip. I think the best press conference he ever did was before 2022 in that very setting when he said, we know success is coming. And he was just sitting down in a chair. He had a lapel mic on, and he was just speaking as though we were having a casual conversation. And that's usually what he does with the ACC, with the FSU media. And he did it again today. But he clearly was saving something for the national media or the TV media when it was time to go to the podium an hour after he spoke to you.
So I'm just, when you talk about preferences, Tom, the preference we share is the genuine, somewhat soft-spoken, introspective, contemplative Mike Norvell.
Yeah, because I think we agree that we think that's who he is.
I want to believe that's who he is. I guess I don't know. But yes, I like that version, and I think it is more genuine. And I wish more coaches in general would take that air on, because I think they feel sometimes, and I get it, man, you're in front of cameras all the time. I think it's a trick of the trade that I practice, is that years and years ago, when you're breaking into the business and you're learning how to do this job, you got to do it in front of a microphone. You got to do it now. These days, they're all multimedia. It's performative as well, but it won't work if you're not having a real conversation with your audience. So whatever you do, like if you're animated because you're angry, it's got to be a real anger. If you're being jovial or goofy, the audience has to know that. And or if we're just having a conversation, then we're just having a conversation. And however you speak and whatever your body language is, that has to come across too. And I think coaches sometimes fall victim to what we all do when cameras are placed in front of us, especially if there's 10 of them and there's pressure. And there's a lot of things that, there's messaging. There's a lot of things that you're trying to accomplish. And so you're not able to just talk because you have an agenda, you have a goal. And sometimes coaches, I think, get lost in that messaging aspect of what they're trying to do, the performative aspect of what they're trying to do in a setting like this, Tom, because this is a zoo. And, all around me, these are talking heads, and they're talking to players and coaches, and these guys are being peppered. And you're trying to get to a mental place to deal with that. And then you go upstairs and you're in that big dining hall, not dining hall, the big, huge lecture
Ballroom.
hall.
Yeah.
Ballroom, yeah. And you're up on a stage. Now it's the bright lights and you're in a dark room, and it's again performative. The version, you're absolutely right, of Mike, that is contemplative and takes the time to think about the question, takes the time to slow down. That's my version. The animated Mike, I think, is the Mike that people are going to talk about today on Twitter and places and social media sites. But the reason for that is that's a guy who's going on the attack. So to me, that's a guy who's going to get out in front of it and go on the attack and try to diffuse the amount of questions that he's going to get about a subject that he's frankly tired of talking about and wants to move on from.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's because he's seeing them for the first time and he's seen us a bunch. So I like the idea that you're taking a different strategy because your audience, the room that you're speaking to. That shows awareness. It's going to be interesting to document because in full transparency, this is just a little bit before 11 a.m. Eastern as we're recording this. It'll be interesting to document how he weaves through the day because there's the breakout room. Obviously, there's Radio Row. He's doing a full television interview on the ACC network set. So is he going to be that aggressive every time he speaks to a national media member? Is he going to be, curt or overpowering? Or is he going to start to weave back and forth? And this is going to be kind of like slaloming down a hill for him. It's going to be fun to see. And obviously, he's going to be talking to you straight up here on this show later today.
Yeah, he's going to be sitting right across from me here in just a short period of time. In fact, as I look at the clock right now, we got to take a quick break. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV, broadcasting live from Charlotte Radio Row. More in a moment. I think it's interesting. Welcome back, Charlotte, North Carolina, Jeff Cameron Show, Radio Row. Listen, some of the things for the final time that we'll have to go through, because pretty soon it won't matter. Pretty soon we'll have practice. Pretty soon we'll have games, and we won't have to focus on talking season in terms of what players said or didn't say or demeanor and things like that. We'll have the meat and potatoes that we're all starving for. Push to elevate the standard to compete, phrase that Mike used over and over. Tommy works, and this is what I wanted to get into. You knew he was going to be asked, and he was yet again, about Castellanos' comments regarding Alabama not being able to stop him. And obviously the bravado shown there and the confidence that he has in himself there. This is as good an answer as I've heard. And if it's true, It puts your fears. It doesn't mean that if you didn't like what he had to say or you thought he rolled his teammates or it was a red flag, there are plenty of people who think that, and then there are people who think, whatever, kids talk, they get out over their skis, and later on they have to walk it back, but it's not going to have much of an impact on the game itself once the ball is snapped and all those things. And I kind of could agree with both sides on this. But here's what I would tell you. Mike's answer to Tommy's bravado was to tell us that Tommy works so hard. He puts in the effort, and he said, and I love true confidence, but that is only revealed not in words, but the willingness to do the work. So he believes it was kind of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm going to try to translate this as best I can. I think he was saying, I didn't love everything Tommy said. I wish, maybe he hadn't said it. But Tommy's brash and he's confident, but the confidence that he has comes from the work that he does. And I can abide by that. I can live with somebody who is that kind of confident and that kind of bold and brash if I know that it's derived from the day-to-day humble efforts to improve oneself. And to me, Tom, that's if you're looking to be heartened in some way or emboldened in some way about the kind of year that Tommy Castellanos is going to have, needs to have, hopes to have, it's that apparently he has been a very, very, very hard worker this offseason, that he has taken the reins as somebody who leads by example in the weight room at, the get-togethers where they're working out and all those things, in the film room, that he's done all of those things. And really, I think if you're a fan, because look, you're not trying to be his friend. You're not trying to hang out with Tommy Castellanos. You're a hard worker who's going to the games and wants to know that Florida State's going to have the best 22 out there and that all 22 work their ass off to represent proudly and make each other better. Well, it's nice to know that the kid's doing the work. It's nice to know that the kid isn't just a talker, but he's somebody who's come in and worked hard. And again, that's all I'll say about that, because we're going to have concrete proof of whether or not this experiment works once the season starts. But it was nice to hear that answer, because he's going to get asked that question a lot. He's going to get asked that question a ton, over and over again, about who is Tommy Castellanos and what do you make of those comments? And if the answer is going to be, well, yeah, he's a brash kid. Sure, he's confident. I don't mind that necessarily because he's a hard worker. That's a good answer.
Yeah, agreed. I just hope that the work thing is true. That's the whole thing here. And you saw a little bit of evidence in that when he went to the scrimmage in the spring, that there was accountability, and there was also moments where you go, woo, Tommy runs a little hot.
He's fiery.
Especially when talking to the coaches, he said, because he wanted to be put back on the field in a situation where he felt like, all right, I've stood on the sidelines long enough. Get me back out there. Like, everybody wants that. Everybody wants that. And that's full stop. And if that's the type of thing that he brings to the table with the work behind it, I think people will put up with that. Even teammates who don't like you will put up with that, because we've all been on teams where there are guys that could be either big contributors or important role players, and you just don't like them and you don't get along with them. But if they work their butt off in practice, you respect the hell out of them, and you can't wait to send the ball their way or to watch them step into the box, because we're all in this together, kind of a thing. And so it could be that the team loves him. I'm not trying to insinuate that they don't. I'm saying that it ain't my style. I'm not a big fan. But if he's working his butt off, I wasn't a big fan of Baker Mayfield in college either. I keep coming back to that because I see similarities. Undersized, chip on their shoulder, me against the world, take it a little bit too far. That's the way I felt about Baker at Oklahoma. But guess what? He's the Bucs quarterback. I think he's matured some in between. But I'm sure if you're a fan of, say, the Giants last year when he did the Tommy Cutlets, you're probably not a big fan of Baker Mayfield celebrating the end zone and doing that kind of stuff. And if you're a fan of the Falcons or the Panthers, you don't like Baker Mayfield very much because he has that little edge to him. That's what I'm hoping Tommy turns into for us this year, is that guy who kind of drives the conversation and takes Florida State to a place where last year they were weak mentally. This kind of bark can lead to real bite if it's genuine behind the scenes and there's work behind it. I think that's what Mike's trying to get to. But when it comes to platitudes and things like that, I am cautiously optimistic at best with this particular quarterback this year.
We all have to be, because it's the exact same experiment that they conducted a year ago. They brought in a transfer quarterback that, I think the fan base was pretty split on at the time that they brought him in. Different personalities, different skill sets. One's a giant with a very big arm and not mobile even a little bit, as we found out, unfortunately, after an injury, in my estimation. The other is diminutive as football standards go, with a less than accurate arm, and not as big an arm as you'd like, but a dynamic runner who's going to be running an offense that is built around that athleticism, so it could work. I think there are question marks for both, is my point, and it's the same process. It's bringing in somebody from the outside, not somebody who was already on the roster, who's put in the work, who's been here for 2 and 3 years that the other players know about. And so you have to hope that you've pressed the right buttons. You have to hope that he's the right answer to all the questions that arose as we watched the disaster play out last year. It is a very similar experience and an experiment. I do think there are differences. I said it yesterday on the show. I'm going to ask Mike about it here in a few minutes. I think there are differences in the qualities and traits that they were looking for in this year's transfer crop.
Yeah, no, there are. The thing that I'm skeptical of, and I think we all would be correct to feel skeptical, allow yourself that space. Like when he said today, and I'm talking about the general comments Mike made about the team building, and the quote was, I'll pull it up exactly. Last year we did a lot more forced team building. There was a reason.
Right.
All right. It doesn't feel on the same level as what Tommy was doing when he left Boston College and he has those offseason comments, but it's almost like Mike is telling you, okay, now that we're far enough removed from last year, I can tell you, those guys didn't get along at all. We needed to work very hard to try to get these guys together because they didn't like each other. Now that we're on the precipice of 2025, I can clue you in on that. But guess what, everybody? This year, that's not the case at all. And so for me, like, I want to believe that. It's difficult to buy into that wholeheartedly and take Mike at his word, because last year we all got burned so much. And I think that extends to the Castellanos and quarterback discussion here, is like, are you doing the same thing you were doing last year, which is you're covering up for issues that you know damn well are going on behind the scenes that people weren't hearing about? Or are you telling us, no, for real, guys, for real, last year, that's right, blowing a little smoke, trying to misdirect a little bit, hoping it would all work out. But this year, don't have to do that. It's just hard to place that trust without seeing it. And I think that's where a lot of the fan base is. I know that's where I am right now in total skeptical mode.
Thankfully, they started practice on Wednesday. Thankfully, they report on Tuesday. I will tell you some of the other things that came out of the morning meeting, just trying to get to non-speculative things. It is interesting to me, and I think it's encouraging, and I wrote my notes here, that once again, so I talk about leadership, I talk about Richie Leonard being referred to repeatedly by Mike Norvell, and you hear it when you talk to Richie Leonard, who I'm going to talk to, and I it's very impressive to listen to him talk. He sounds like a grandfather almost, the way that he talks about his teammates and this program and his role in it and all of those things. But of the young players, Tom, I thought it was great. Javon Boggs he came up again, and that's like, what, 15 times we've heard that name in this season, the spring and into the offseason. Chafe Laughlin was brought up again. We'll see. I got to see what kind of role. Obviously, he's talented and he's tall, and he was used a lot in the spring. He's light for a tight end. It's going to be interesting. But I do like that he brought up Croma, has come in and really been a guy that they're excited at. And how about Mr. Wynn? Mr. Wynn's name coming up 3 times this morning as a guy. And Daryl Jackson said about Juju Wynn, he is strong like me, and he's only a freshman.
Okay. So this is you're delivering news to me as you're delivering news to the people, because behind the scenes, I'm on the assembly line. I got no time to see and appreciate what's on the assembly line. I'm just moving it, moving it down. So to hear Daryl say that, more than even Richie, to hear Daryl say he's strong like me, that gives me hope that Kevin's going to be in, and it's Kevin Wynn, Juju Wynn is going to be in the rotation this year.
I think he's going to get some playing time. I do. It sounds like he's going to. They're trying to be cautious about it, but I thought it was interesting because, my goodness gracious, to say that he's strong like me and he's just a freshman, and he smiled and chuckled when he said it. He's like, because the question was a second part, which was, why is he impressive? Is it body type? Is it his weight or size early in his career? And he goes, no, man, he's strong like me. Strong like me, and he's a freshman. I was like, okay, that would be different, by the way, to have a kid come in as a true freshman and have that kind of.
Well, yeah, this is also something that this year, let's just say, because I know that Mike Norvell addressed Jason Jenkins this morning and said that halfway through camp he should be participating and doing real things.
Interesting, yeah,
like real things, whatever he said, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that Jenkins should be available, at least the way Mike is projecting it right now and divulging to the media, at some point during the season. That's a large three-man front that you're putting together, considering that James Williams put on upwards of 35 pounds since he got here on campus, and he's in the 260 range and maybe the upper 260 range by the time we kick it off. Daryl Jackson is a behemoth. He's 330. Jason Jenkins is a large guy. Daniel Lyons is wiry for the position, but he's not small. Kevin Wynn, if he's in the rotation. And then they have McCray and Diggs as well. Even the Desir twins, who I heard were brought up today, just a question about freshmen, those are large body types for true freshmen too. Like when you actually lay it out there, and let's just say it's a three-man defensive rotation, if you're going to have three dudes out there, those are three large body types that Florida State can throw out there in different combinations. This is going to be – I don't know how tough they will be, how tough they will play, because last year scares us all in that regard. But if you're just talking about frame, size, measurables, Florida State's defensive front does kind of look the part this year when you're just going down the line of the rosters and you're looking at heights and weights.
You've got to depend on some kids that are going to come in and play right away and be able to physically withstand it. And a couple of them are very young, so that's why you worry about it. But you're right, the measurables part of that, it's there. It's there. You just never know. How physically strong are you? Going against grown-ass men in some cases. I'll tell you this, you're going up against grown-ass men against Alabama. I talked to the person up here today that also covers the SEC, and he said that he thinks Alabama's offensive line is the best in the country, and that's one of 5 or 6 that have said that this offseason. So you're going to get a test right out the gates.
Oh, 100% you are. It's just you juxtapose that to some of the years early in Mike's tenure where you're saying, man, I hope they have a chip on their shoulder because they ain't large. Like that's one year. Right. This is one place, one position group. Defensive back has been like this. It's just that nobody ever got developed and materialized, and we're hoping that maybe that changes a little bit this year. But the reserves, the cavalry, the help is on the way for Florida State and the defensive front. The size matches the program. A lot of times, again, we have to go dip into the transfer portal over the last 5 years in order to look the part, at least at the starting level. But if you look, you're talking about Wynn, the Desir twins. I know Harold came up today, and Tyler Lee came up.
Yeah, McCray. Yep.
All these dudes, yeah, that's a couple of transfers, but like all these younger guys, and they match the size profile of what we expect at Florida State. So let's just say you hit on 2 of them, and you have a 3-man defensive front. So if you hit on 2 young players with the guys you already have, Jason Jenkins gets healthy, you might actually have a path there to have a defensive line anchored by Daryl Jackson, no doubt, anchored by Daryl Jackson. But that actually impresses and brings some strength to the table.
By the way, Daryl looks great. I mean, he just looks great. He always has, though, Tom. When you're standing right next to him, I was standing next to him as he got to sit up on the stage on the dais there, and I was just like, I don't know how anybody ever blocks that. They do, and they have, but he's a monster. He's just a monster. And I wanted to play like it.
It's also worth resetting too. That if you burned last year out of your brain, don't blame me for it. That it was a steady increase in productivity, and
from him,
probably this way because of the way the camera looks. But for Daryl, like as the season went along, he got better and better. It wasn't peaks and valleys. You could tell that once he got into football shape, there was a baseline of productivity. The Miami game was a good game for him that night. Mm-hmm. But as the season went along, you just saw a steady improvement and then the flashes of what the size should do. So it wasn't like he ended last year as one of those types of players. I'll throw the name out there, Shaheem Brown, where you're questioning, were you still invested? No, that wasn't Daryl. That wasn't a problem for him. So if the trend continued through the offseason, you might finally see what the body type would suggest.
Come back, wrap up the hour here in just a moment. Live from Charlotte, it's the Jeff Cameron Show, Radio Row, ACC kickoff. More in a moment. So in the interest of being transparent here in a few minutes, I will have Tommy Castellanos sitting down across from me, talking to him. You'll hear that interview on today's show. We'll try to turn these around very quickly. This begins a parade of interviews that I'll be doing. It's followed by Daryl Jackson, followed by head coach Mike Norvell. From there, it's looking like we'll get Richie Leonard, and I'm not sure, maybe Earl Little Jr. before the day is up. We've heard from Earl Little Jr., by the way. I didn't mention him, Tom. We got good audio from him, so if we have to, we'll use that for the show as well. But that was in the breakout room in the collected media, and he is not lacking confidence either, but also very, very excited about his role in this defense. And, I think I will tell you, he sounds like a kid who's probably been humbled a little bit, Tom. I mean, this is a guy who I think thought would come in and his level of athleticism would immediately translate to success. And that didn't happen, really. And he had some injury problems, and he's come back from that. I thought he was as productive from what I could tell at the scrimmage that I went to, but then also talking to the coaches. I think he was probably one of the 2 or 3 guys that they would have singled out as the most productive during the spring. And he does possess something that I think is of vital importance to this team this year and can help set the stage. And this is something Mike continues to emphasize. A whole lot of what for. He will crank you. He will hit you. He is a guy who's not afraid to come in fast and fire. They didn't have enough of it last year. I just need to know that he's going to be doing that from the right spot, and that he's going to know what he sees and act accordingly, because he's got ability, real ability. They got to get it out of him. That was part of the tragedy. Is I just didn't feel like they were getting certain things out of guys last year who possessed that athleticism. So this is going to be a big moment.
Well, yeah, this also tells you a little bit more about what Adam Fuller's staff was able to do or not able to do in terms of development. There's a few players like that you're talking about. Earl Little's one of them. A couple of the corners and safeties, I think, qualify as well. There were guys who had instincts to play. For example, when Edwin Joseph stepped on the field last year, I always smiled because you could tell there was that little extra in his game, much like Earl. Didn't play the same positions, but you saw that same urgency in the way they played. So I look forward to seeing what he does. Again, this is it. The Earl Little discussion is intertwined with the Tony White discussion, is intertwined with the Evan Cooper discussion, which is, do new sets of eyes and new skill sets that arrive on campus at the coaching level provide the development necessary that you can finally start getting multi-year players to improve year over year? It sounds so basic, but how many guys, I mean, there were some, but how many guys over Norvell's tenure at Florida State improved year over year? Not as many as you'd like. A lot of times it was you airdropped a transfer in and it got better. It wasn't that you had a guy on campus for 2 years and he got better in year 2 and then he got better in year 3. There were some of those. Jordan Travis, obviously. Kalen DeLoach was another one. Jerrion Jones is another. But it's not like you got a humongous list in that regard. And that's what everybody's hoping this year that Tony White can do. And Earl Little is somebody that is easy to root for. We're just hoping that he's not somebody that you're watching in highlight reels as the trailer. He's in highlight reels as the hitter. He's in highlight reels as the ball hawk or whatever it is.
I will tell you that Ira came on, you were here, but Ira and I just looked at each other. We sat next to each other for the commissioner's press conference, and we were watching the montage, the big video, the inspirational I Love the ACC video that they play before the commissioner comes out. And I cracked up. We were both watching carefully to see whether Florida State was made to look foolish by whoever put that video together, because they could have, in light of the lawsuit and the season, they could have been like, oh, here's your highlights. You'll be represented equally. Here you go. I'll highlight it as BC torches you. I'll highlight it as SMU torches you. I'll highlight it as, name the team in the league. But this is the first time I've ever said it. They were fair. They were completely fair. There were plenty of moments that you're like, here's the Noles looking like the Noles. They must have had to search long and hard for that video.
Maybe it's just that the folks at the ACC who put these things together have a pity complex. You know, it's like they have the teams that they love. North Carolina's always going to get showered with praise. They'll find a way to work Notre Dame in there, even though they're not a member, and Clemson.
Yeah,
but then there's like this other group. They're like, we feel bad for these guys. Let's give them a lot of representation.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I give them credit. It's the only time I've given the ACC much credit. They did a good job with that yesterday, and we were both kind of relieved. All right, so it is. We'll start hour 2 here momentarily. Got some interviews on the way for you. Jeff Cameron Show live from Charlotte, Radio Row, and we got 2 more of these. Coach Norvell coming up too. Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV, broadcasting on Radio Row in Charlotte. Fun hour as Mike Norvell is set to join us. Tommy Castellanos set to join us. You'll get both of those interviews in this hour. And then towards the back end, I had a chance to sit down with a couple more players, including Earl Little Jr. and Darrell Jackson, as well as yesterday having an opportunity to talk about the big picture stuff before football gets underway with Lee Sterling of Paramount Sports and Locked On Bets. So he'll join us as well in that third hour. Busy day. Transition day as we get set later to take off and head back to Tallahassee. Do have Richie Leonard on deck in the not too distant future, so somebody will probably use on tomorrow's show, Tom. Richie Leonard, who I really am excited to talk to because that's a young man that everybody to a man on this team talks about as a leader and somebody they look up to. So look forward to the 2 interviews. Mike has been all things to all people here. I've watched him come through Radio Row here and probably sit down with no fewer than 7 or 8 radio stations. So if he's got some juice when I talk to him, I don't know about juice, maybe some just relaxation. We'll just have a conversation, just a big picture, state of the program kind of conversation.
Well, I'm curious to hear your characterization of how he looks as he's moving through that room versus the energy brought to the TV podium versus what he was in the ACC, because we talked about that in the first hour. Kind of painting the picture of how his day goes. Because I got to imagine on Radio Row, some of the questions will be pointed and some of the questions will just be bumfuzzled. They're like, Mike, what happened? You know, if it's the same group that talked to him the year prior when Florida State was the toast of the town and obviously the snub was the talk. Most ACC desks, I would think, over there would be siding with Florida State as to what happened in the college football playoff, and it shouldn't have happened. So I'm sure it was very rah-rah last year. This year, I'm sure on several places, what gives, man? What happened? A whole lot of new things going on in Tallahassee.
Yeah, and I wanted to see, would he be guarded? I wanted to see, would he be, on the defensive? Would he be, how aggressive he would be in trying to set a narrative? I feel like he's, I don't know, I think Mike's in a good place, just judging by his body language here and watching. What they do, too, they come through here, they do a radio hit or 2, then they'll turn around and they'll go back upstairs and they'll do a TV hit. And then there's where I'm seated. It's impossible for you guys to see, but back behind me around the corner, beneath some of those banners, there's a slew of like ESPN and other people that are set up with cameras, and they'll pull guys in for a stand-up. So it really is, I think, an exhausting day from a standpoint of being peppered with questions, probably very similar questions time and again, very similar answers, and yet you're tasked, obviously, with being engaging and hopefully, obviously, informative. And you imagine there are people here, I have not encountered it yet, that will test one's patience. You get certain types of radio hosts. They don't all do the profession well, Tom. They try to ambush you. They try to embarrass you because they think it makes for good radio. I don't personally, but, you see that sort of thing. And every now and then you'll see a grimace from a player or a coach and trying to deal with that. But so far, nothing crazy like that. And Mike is kind of just taking it question by question from what I can tell and doesn't seem to be too agitated or worked up. Now, I know he was at the dais. I know he was when he was in front of the cameras. But, no, on Radio Row, he's been really pretty relaxed. And I'll tell you one thing I do know from talking to him off the record, some on the record, and this is an easy thing for anybody to figure out. When you've fallen off the bike, you get back on the bike. And we're all little kids at some point, and we're trying to learn a new craft or trying to do something that we love to do, and we're failing at it, or we have a setback while doing it. you just want to keep doing it, and you don't want to talk about when you fell down. You don't want to talk about the things that frustrated you before. You just want to get at the next attempt. And, I think for Mike, this has been probably an interminable offseason, one that had to feature an awful lot of looking in the mirror, reacting to whatever the assessments were from outside groups, people he trusted, other coaches. I'm sure a lot of these, coaching is a very close-knit community. All of these guys have been around and seen some crazy things in the coaching world, the highest highs and the lowest lows and all those things. And so my thought is he probably tapped into some of that. Obviously, he reached out to Gus and was able to get him to come in. And obviously, he had an idea that he wanted Tony White and some of the other coaches. But he's got some mentors in this business that have been on staffs that have gone through some rough years, and some guys that have won a lot of games too. So I imagine that he had to call on some friends and that level of expertise and say, hey, you ever go through this? You ever have a situation where, things didn't work out the way you wanted, or the team is disconnected, or, got any advice about how to rally the troops? And either he will or he won't. I know he's got an idea about what he wants it to look like. He has repeated that over and over and over again. The whole offseason has namely been about competition and the next rep and getting after it. And there are consequences for not playing to a certain standard. He said at one point, what it looks like has to be upheld, meaning, I know what it means to have success. I know what those practices look like. I know what those games look like. I know how it resulted in an undefeated season. I think he rused the day that he allowed for reps to come and go during last year's practices leading up to the season. And he could see the disconnect. He could see days that were empty days, frustrating days, not productive days. And he just didn't do enough to interject and to put an end to those sort of going through the motions moments. That's the sense I get from him when he's talking about over and over again, well, there's a standard, there's a way you do things, there's a way that it has to look. And if it doesn't, we need to call you out on that. Well, you only bring that up if you didn't do it a year ago. And I get a sense that he if he has regrets, it's that maybe he sensed there were some problems a year ago and he didn't say anything about it.
Yeah, working backwards, you think about his comments in spring practice and how, he wants to meet players where they are, and he wants to work with players one-on-one. That's I think that all fits together nicely to create the picture of what you're talking about, which is there was an attitude at some point over the last year before the season started where he says, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll all work out. It always works out. No, it didn't work out, man. It's imploding. This whole thing's imploding. And so now you're trying to get into proactive places rather than be reactive. And I think that's the whole point here. He can turn the keys over to the I think to some degree, even the defense he probably was still involved with Adam Fuller. And I don't mean scheming things up. I just think about the dynamics of watching the two of them talk at practice. Yeah, Mike would flock to the offensive side of the field, but he would be standing next to Adam an awful lot, especially when they would get into 11-on-11 work, and there would be some back and forth. It just seems like he's totally turned over the keys to both sides of the ball this year, which does free up some time. And then I know that it was a metaphor that you were speaking to. Is this a decent time to interject that I never learned how to ride a bike?
Oh, my God.
I never did.
Oh, my God.
I put skates on my feet when I was 5-6 years old. And I skated everywhere. I never biked. I was always on skates.
Has curiosity gotten the best of you at any point? Have you tried to get on a bike?
I loved skating. I really never did.
No, but I'm saying, like, you're a grown man now. Have you ever thought about getting on a bike?
I don't see the need. No.
Tom, you can't leave the earth without having ridden a bike.
Should I probably achieve this before I die?
Yes, just to say, hey, I've ridden a bike. I know how to do it. It's not all it's cracked up to be, guys. Listen, I don't ride bikes. I hate riding bikes. Bike riding's not for me. It's not my cup of tea. I can ride the hell out of one because I learned how to ride a bike when I was a kid. Just get on a bike, do it around the neighborhood one time, and be like, okay, I've done that. Check, ridden a bike. Next, you're going to tell me you can't swim?
Oh, no, I can totally swim. I'm fine there. Yeah, once I had skates on, I was like, that was it. And that's why I had tree trunks for legs for most of my life, because I just skated everywhere.
That is just hilarious. I'll expound more after we talk to Mike Norvell. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Welcome back, Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. We're broadcasting live in Charlotte, Radio Row. Mike Norvell, head football coach, joins me now. Always a pleasure, Coach. Good to see you again. How you been?
I've been good. I have some media days here, so it means practice is right in front of us. A week from today we'll be back on the field. And really proud of our guys for the work they put in, and just excited to get it kicked off.
Yeah, you're probably ready to get this season started. It's been a volatile 2 years, from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. You've spoken on it a million times. I know you don't want to be talking about it right now, but I am kind of curious, with the role that you've described that you are operating in now, head coach, CEO, you can put your hands on more things. Did you come to that conclusion in the midst of last year's disappointment, only you were handcuffed to do anything about it until the offseason, or was it only after you had a chance to look back and say what went wrong and why I need to do this?
In full transparency, there were moments in 23 that you look at it, and even when things are going, like, you see the evolution of college athletics and some of the different dynamics, some of the different things that are pulled, but ultimately that was when you face the extremes, those things usually come out. And I do believe that with the opportunities that we've had, the decisions we've been able to make, some of the personnel and guys that we've had join the program and the coaching staff, it's really allowing me to be what I believe I need to be for these players, for this program, in every phase. And so I'm excited about what's ahead, but there's you always reflect, and even after that 23 season of reflection, there's some of those thoughts, but it just the dynamic of how all things were, it's kind of saw it play out.
You're not apt to make massive changes after winning 13 games in a conference title. Right? You can see it, but it's harder to act on it. Obviously, you're going to act after last year. So how quickly can you build culture? Modern era of college football, very hard. Players coming and going. They're allowed to leave as they please. You have NIL. When you operate in the transfer portal as much as you have successfully, how soon do you know a team has good culture and good leadership?
Well, I think it still comes down to the action. And, it is, anybody can say what they want to say, but, even a year ago, in this, I remember immediately going around and everybody's asking all the questions, new faces, what's going to be, and what's your concern? And my concern was, what was the moment of truth going to look like? And that's where when it's all on the line, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? What's it going to be? Players, all of it. And from this team, I've been so pleased since December. I would almost say the aggressiveness that they've had of investing into each other, pouring in, the willingness to speak up, but being led by the action. And, that's where you've got to bring that edge. It's hard to win a college football game, and, it's hard to win, a rep in a college football game, but it takes a determination. And, I know I've thrown around the word desperation, but it's a necessity. Like the fight to win and all that you're doing, being the best that you can possibly be. And that's where, I've seen that show up. And, I was asked, earlier, about, have changes been made and with the team building and this and that. And to be honest with you, we've probably done less, folks of having to do leadership and team building because it's happened more naturally with this group. And it's one I'm excited about. And, it's going to be a daily competition. And that's where, I've tried to, spark that competition on a daily basis. We finished every workout in the off season with, whether it was one-on-one or as group on group. It was all eyes on you in that moment, trying to create that moment of truth to see where they would go. And that response has been really positive. And, we still get to go live that out. But, I'm definitely, it's given me a lot of confidence of what I believe this team has, but now we get to go do it.
When I look at the players that you brought in, it seems not only was there an emphasis on their talents, obviously you're going to bring in players that can play or fit a system. It seems to me like you had wanted to look deeper at who they were in terms of competitors. You're talking a lot about that now. You're talking up there, talking here. So it wasn't just you looking at highlights saying that kid fits a system. Who is he? Is he a fighter? Is he a competitor?
Well, and that's where, like, if you look at our roster, this is not a roster of finished products. I mean, this is one that, we've got guys that have shown, they've shown and played in a lot of games, and guys that are, going through their journey with a desire for best. And that's where, I've seen them on the field where they've had the great play. They've had the disappointing moment, but who they are, the production that they've had, but they come with that edge, and they come with that determination. And really, in today's age of college athletics, I mean, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of dynamics that for an 18, 22-year-old that can make them comfortable, right? I don't want comfort. I want guys that absolutely are willing to pour it all in to go be what they say they want to be. And that's what I have felt. And that's what I've been looking for, whenever it was from the high school ranks, the guys that were on our team last year. It was, we had some hard conversations and had to make some tough decisions with guys that were, talent is there,
right.
But it's mentality and obviously all things that are necessary to go accomplish and be what we can.
When I listened to you talk in the spring, it seemed like you were trying to get that across every day. That basically, like, look, this is going to be a hard spring, basically, is what it looks like to me, because you were having to decide whether kids needed to still be here or not. Were they going to accept the challenge to rep the way that you wanted them to?
Yeah, and it's I tried to set that back in December and January and December, and basically you take January through spring practice. It's this is your opportunity to show each other, right, who can be counted on. This is where you get to build that, because everybody can come in and all players, coaches, everybody, they're all going to say the right things of what we want, but in the moment, what shows up. And there were so many opportunities where you had the competitive aspect of good on good, right? And there would be times where there are a couple situations where a player got beat on a rep and they didn't get the immediate run back, because that's not real in a game. Sometimes I need a do-over on that. That's not, but when that next opportunity shows up, what are you going to do with it? And we had those times where you saw the fight. You saw the guys digging deep with everything that they had to go be better. And that's those lessons that you get to point to. And I've seen it. I know you can do it. Now it's time for us to do that as a football team. So yes, the challenges were created for them to put on display for each other, that when they say that this is what we're going to be, right, that the work's actually behind it, rather than, hey, this is what we hope to be, because that's what, at this time of year, I mean, everybody can talk a good game, right? It's not about the talk that you have. It's about the actions that you're going to show, and we know what it takes. There's plenty of coaches out there that are talking about winning a championship here this fall. They haven't won them, though. Right? We've done it. We know what it looks like. We know what it takes. And that expectation and that demand for the standard to be upheld, that's what we have to go live out.
And Wednesday it starts, Tuesday they report. Final thing. So spring obviously had to be installed, getting used to Gus's offense, tempo, all those things. Some guys were out. You said earlier, get all these guys back. What are you looking for that first couple of weeks? How quickly can you get to where this thing is humming?
Yeah, I mean, it's the cohesiveness of guys coming together. I think we've had a great summer in players making that investment and players doing all that they could to try to accelerate that process. You're getting those guys back healthy, working together, timing, but it's going to be an ever-flowing 25 practices that are a necessity, and we've got to make the most of all of them. But I'm excited about where we are going in, and now it's just the work of every bit of it that's ahead to prepare us for August 30th.
Good luck.
Appreciate you.
Pleasure to see you, Coach.
All right, thanks so much. Go Noles.
Be well. That's Mike Norvell, head football coach, Florida State. We thank him as always. Thank Derek and the gang here in Charlotte. We continue to broadcast live from Radio Row or the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Welcome back, Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. We are here in Charlotte, ACC kickoff, Radio Row. Tommy Castellanos, starting quarterback.
Yes, sir.
Florida State University joins me right now. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. This has got to be fun, right?
No, yeah. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was up there in the breakout room, got to hear you talk a little bit there, but I know you have to rehash a lot of things.
No, yeah.
So we're going to start fresh. How excited are you to be able to run an offense now that is pretty much catered to your skill set?
I'm excited to just be back with Coach Gus Malzahn. Like I said, he's got a lot of success in the previous years and the guys that he's had and running the offense he's running, and a guy with my ability to have that offense to a high level, and I'm just excited to be just be me and go out there and play football and not have to worry about, being held back or anything like that. So he's giving me the keys to the offense, and he's giving me all the confidence in me, and they're pouring into me, and got guys around me to help me to be the best me I can be. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to go out there and run that offense, and hopefully it goes good.
I know you've given the reasons that you were excited when Gus reached out and when Florida State made that hire. You have that background.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to see one of the scrimmages in the spring. We didn't get let in much, but we got to see that. And one of the things that I noticed was that you seem to have a real command of the offense.
No, yes, sir.
You know it. Other guys were having to learn it. Talk about your role in helping them learn this offense, because you seem to have it backwards and forwards to the point where you were able to point out to people the mistakes, but also the successes.
Yeah, just being with him my freshman year and not playing, being able to learn and prepare like I was going to play and learn the offense and study and stuff like that. It's like, it was – I didn't know it right. I knew it when I got back in it, but of course I had to refresh memory and go through a couple things and stuff like that. So, but yeah, just getting back in it and being comfortable with it and being able to run it smooth and efficiently has been helping me and helping my teammates and be able to teach them, how things are supposed to be done and how we're supposed to execute, the little things and stuff like that within the offense. But the way we move and how fast we're going at fast tempo, we have to be very precise and we have to execute in order for us to, move at a high tempo and pace. So in order to move high tempo and pace, it's going to be best and it's going to benefit us because guess what? Now guys can't substitute and guys can't look at over there and get their play call because we're snapping the ball so fast. So if we get that offense down to the way we want it to be, I think we'd be really good because defense won't be able to stop us.
How hard is that? That'll probably be the biggest difference between spring and fall camp. It opens up on Wednesday. You're now under pressure to get things going, whereas install was happening in spring. Do you feel like you guys came far enough along? I know some guys were out, so it can be frustrating.
Well, so this summer and then after spring, it's we get together on our own. I get the guys together on our own, and we go out there and we call the plays and we get the installs in and running it. So we get out on Wednesday, we full throttle. Guys know the offense now. Guys should know day one installs, and guys should know what's going on. So we're not holding back for anybody. We're not slowing down for anybody. Gus says it all the time. The train has left the station, and we're rolling. You can get on and get left.
You live in the same place or with Deuce, basically.
I
was going to ask you about Deuce. Dominic, his dad, I watched him play here. I've interviewed him many times. He works with us sometimes at Warchant.
Yes, sir.
What's that relationship like? You guys, I know open door policy at your place is what I remember.
We stay right across the hall from each other, he kind of walks in whenever he wants to come over, and I kind of walk in whenever I want to go over to his place. We have a great relationship, man. Open door policy. The door stays unlocked for each other unless we're about to go to bed or whatnot. But Deuce is a very friendly guy, friendly target, friendly guy. He's
6'6".
He's a lot taller than me, so I don't stand around him much around the ladies, but that's my guy.
So, did you have any relationship beforehand?
No, I don't like. When Coach told me that he was coming in after I commit, because the process and going to the portal, people want to know who's the quarterback's going to be. So you commit first, and then guys, okay, well, I'll consider this place because they got this guy and whatnot. And then when he decided to come on a visit, that just meant everything to me. So they called me and told me to come up and kind of help host and help out with him. And then, just hanging out with him and being around him and his family, we kind of just meshed really well. It was crazy how great of a bond that we connected and had when we first met each other for the 2 or 3 days he was on his visit. And then when he left and went back home, and we could kind of stayed in touch and FaceTimed a little bit and kind of, bits and pieces and to get each other mind and get into each other's brain. We just connected really well. And we actually had a couple of sessions together talking about ball and stuff like that. And we watched film together. Like his dad would pull up some old FaceTime, watch a couple of my plays, and I watched some of his plays, and everything just felt so right and so real. And we wanted to play with each other. And he told me if he committed that every single day he was going to get everything out of me, and I told him that I was going to get everything out of you. So we wanted that for each other, and I think that's what really made it happen.
When people talk about your skill set, they always talk about how electrifying of a runner you are. So everybody knows it. Talk about you as a passer.
I don't really know why I don't get the respect or the credit that I have of passing the football. I know 2023 I had a a lot of interceptions my first year going out there just playing ball. But then last year, only 4 with 28 touchdown passes, going and improving in the passing game and taking care of the football. And then even last year, standing there, I took a lot of blows last year, standing in the pocket, delivering that pass or throwing that touchdown pass, being able to just sit in there longer and being a pocket passer. I think that played a lot into everything last year. But this year, I'm not worried about what anybody says. You say I'm a passer, a runner, whatever you say, like I'm going to go out there and just play football and be me and be happy. So whether it's running around, throwing the football, running, or whatever it is, whatever's going to help me and my team win games, I'm going to do that. So regardless of what it is, either passing the ball, running the ball, I'm just going to go out there and play football. I'm not going to worry about the passing or they said the running or anything like that. So I'm just going to go out there and play.
How frustrating. I don't want you to have to relive your past and relitigate any of that. You're here now and you're running this offense. But it had to be tough because they were asking you to stand in the pocket. I watched Boston College. I saw that. I mean, they weren't taking advantage of your feet.
Yeah.
And you have that duality.
Yeah.
So, were you told specifically, like, look, man, we want you to operate from the pocket.
Yeah.
And you were trying to make that work, but there's a whole other element to your game at that point because I can hear the frustration.
Yes, sir. I mean, I liked it, to be honest. They get me ready for the pro. It was a pro style offense. They get me ready for the pros and being a pro quarterback. I actually liked it. To be honest, I don't like running the ball. If I could throw the ball every play and throw the ball, I would throw the ball.
It's nice
but
not
like,
to get hit.
I don't like. Come on now, but crap. But that element to my game, being able to own a pass play, be able to extend the play and get out of the pocket, is what makes my game my game. But I mean, it wasn't nothing on their end, anything like that. It was just a lot of frustration, personally and behind closed doors more than it was on the field. On the field, a lot of people assume that on the field, but on the field, everything was good. It was more of behind closed doors and issues besides football that people just missed and don't know, and it's gonna be that.
When you enter into the portal, I think the fans listening to this want to hear as often as they possibly can about what it's like for a player who enters the portal and the madness. You're being contacted. Yeah. Obviously, this is a nice offense. We've talked about it, your relationship with Gus. What drew you to Florida State beyond just the fact that this seems like a fit? Yeah. Because you could, I mean, they were 2-10 last year. You had other options. Yeah. What drew you to Florida State?
I mean, listen, I grew up 2 hours away from Tallahassee. I always came to the games, and I just always dreamed of being this. Like, I know people always probably think it's BS when I say I dreamed of being here. I wanted to be here. But I actually came to a lot of games when I was a nobody, and when I wasn't getting recruited, when I wasn't playing, all of that. Like, I came to the games. I seen the electrifying atmosphere. I seen the fan base. I seen what the community and the fans bring. Like, we have some hard no fans. Like, my biggest thing when I left and I got in the portal, I was like, I miss the Southern atmosphere of football. I miss where football means everything to this place. I was like, where can I go that football means everything? I came from South Georgia football, high school football. That's all we had. With Friday Night Lights, the whole city shut down. Everybody's at the games. So that's what I missed being up north for 2 years. I was like, where can I go? And football means everything. And the atmosphere is going to be electric. And the fans are going to uplift us, and they're going to come show out and be loud. And whether we losing or we winning, they're going to be there in their support. And I just missed that diehard Southern football atmosphere of where football means everything, and people just diehard fans. Like, that's just what I grew up around. That's why I grew up, and I just wanted to come back to that.
You get the tingles when you think about running out of that tunnel against Alabama.
Like,
game
bro,
one.
like when we out there working out and I see the stadium finished, and I just think about that we're gonna have full capacity, and I seen that the tickets are sold out, and I just remember as a kid now, I'd have been to a rival game against Miami or something, and that thing was, and everybody's loud, and my ears is ringing. I'm like, dude, that's what I miss. Like, people don't understand. Like, we feed off the energy of the fan base. We feed off them and their drive of, if they come up and they show out and they be loud and they be disruptive, that helps. That helps the defense, and that helps us. Don't want to let you guys and make us eager to play for you guys. So you listen to this, come, show out, and be loud, and make it the best atmosphere I've ever been a part of and ever played under. So
Tommy,
I can't wait.
thanks so much for being here, man.
Yes, sir.
Pleasure.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you at camp. You
Yes,
be
sir.
well. Take
Appreciate
care.
you.
Yep. Tommy Castellanos, the quarterback for Florida State, kind enough to drop in here. We always appreciate that. Radio Row or the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV, and just about. Chance now here from Charlotte on Radio Row to react to both head coach Mike Norvell and starting quarterback Tommy Castellanos, who I rather enjoyed talking to. I thought that was a fun interaction. That's the most real side of Tommy that I've seen, and I think I don't know. I'm appreciative of that. He was relaxed. He thrives in these situations. He thrives here. He likes talking to the media. He likes the interaction. He's a gregarious, affable fellow. I will say, Tom, I don't know if it came across. I think it probably did. That seems natural. I think that's real. I think that's who he is. I think he is that kind of gregarious and you know, enjoys this setting very much. So it was fun to talk to him in that regard. And then as for Mike Norvell, I guess we should start there and then we'll react to Tommy. Mike Norvell seemed contemplative, seemed pretty straightforward in his conversation about camp getting underway. I know he's excited about it. I know he's holding guys to. We talked about it in the opening segment before we had Coach on, and it's kind of interesting because circling back, Tom, he addressed it, and that's why I asked him the question I did about whether or not, it wasn't just the reps. It wasn't just the amount of plays that these guys that they brought in have participated in college football, but it was also maybe about who they are, the character. I was trying to get at that big picture conversation with him because I think certainly they changed their point of emphasis. It was cool that he alluded to it because it's clear you can't just bring in guys based on potential. You got to bring in guys that have done it, but also guys that are built a certain way.
Yeah, also I think what you're gathering here through this year's example is kind of like what we were talking about at the opening of the hour. Through omission, here's what really happened. You're learning what Mike went through in 2024 and what he didn't flag or circle. So he's telling you that he saw things in December and January this year that he did not see last go around. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that tells me that he knew in retrospect when things were falling apart. It's 7-0 against Boston College last year, and you see the long look on his face. He might have been thinking about December and January and things that felt a little off, but things that were not addressed. And this year, those things were addressed. And go back to in the moment 7 months ago when he was commenting on the guys that he brought in. And I guess it was the opening presser of spring camp when he said, we were looking for guys who gave elite championship effort, which was also a giant red flag about what the previous team was about, which was not giving effort down in and down out. So they were trying to circle those things on all 22 of pursuit, effort, details, those things. It's an extremely damning picture of 2024. You can't really paint one that's more damning than 2 and 10. But I think what Mike is doing now that he's far enough removed and he's able to talk about this upcoming season is he's willing to let you in just a little bit more as to how broken everything was and maybe some spots on the calendar where things appeared to be broken for last year, which they did a good job of hiding. I'll tell you that much.
Must have been terrifying. That's what I take away from this. It must have been terrifying. I mean, this is your job.
Yeah. I think part of it is I just got done saying they must have done a good job of hiding it. I don't, maybe that's not accurate. They didn't flag it properly. They didn't recognize it at the time just how bad it was. They thought, that's strange, or this group isn't quite like last year's group when it comes to A, B, and C. But it wasn't circled as, we need to fix this problem now. I think the terrifying part came when those cameras captured him, and he spoke about that in the offseason too. My body language was bad. I got to fix that. I think it didn't hit him. It didn't occur to him until in games in the fall that, holy crap, one bad thing leads to another.
Yeah, the extent to which it was broken and was unfolding before his eyes, I don't think he anticipated. I think he clearly, in retrospect, he saw things that concerned him. He was worried a little bit about aspects of the team, but he clearly he didn't know that it was going to affect him to the degree that it did, or he wouldn't have had that reaction. He wouldn't have had that look on his face, that despondent, oh my God, this season is shot look. I didn't get to it. I would have wanted to. I kind of referenced it a little bit, but I did wonder when you're in the midst of a free fall and you're not seeing championship effort, as he talks about, or that the reps don't look like they're supposed to look in practice, and the standard isn't being upheld. And these are all his words. So this is something he is telling you happened, that there were reps in practice that didn't live up to the standard, that that the leadership was lacking, or all of the things that he's alluded to. I say that's terrifying, but I wonder if in the midst of that, he felt handcuffed, because what I would like to know, and maybe we hopefully never have to see it again, maybe it's just in individual spots. Why did you continue to roll a group out there that wasn't living up to the standard and would not give championship effort, and they weren't beholden to their teammates and to that standard, and they weren't willing to fight and win reps? And if you're seeing that all the time in practice, and then you go in the games and you call out effort after certain games, and there are moments in which players don't pursue, or they just run alongside, or as I like to use the phrase, they turn it down. Why did those guys keep playing? Why didn't – because I would rather lose rolling 22 freshmen out there. Like, if I have determined that the juniors and seniors on my team have quit on me, and they've quit on this program, and they've quit on their teammates, and they're humiliating me every Saturday, not because we lose, but because of the way they play, well, why would I let them take the field? Maybe you don't want it to look like there's been a mutiny. Maybe you don't want it to look like you've lost the locker room to the point that you've just had to make mass changes and punt it on the season. But I think people would have respected that, as opposed to rolling certain guys back out there who were the culprits of the no-effort crew. To me, it's always going to be a mystery, but he does hint at, learning from that and demanding more and refusing to allow for that on a rep-to-rep basis. He's now let you know that is not going to happen again. They may win, they may lose too many games, they may not win as many as you'd like, but it won't be because they didn't fight and play hard and do the things that are kind of standard.
Well, my guess is that he understands that he started to steer the ship a little bit late, and it's like anything else, because it's a jumbo liner, cruise liner, you have to make that decision 10 minutes ago, man. It's too late.
We're going to hit the iceberg.
We're going to hit the iceberg.
Yeah.
You were dead 10 minutes ago, and you didn't know it. I think this year is about, okay, are we sinking, or do we just have extensive damage that we can, repair and move on from? I think that's what this year is about, because we talk about this often with players when they have a problem, they face adversity at the collegiate level for the first time. That's the first time in their lives they've never been the best player on the field, or at least not successful, because they finally meet a challenge that is greater than them. Mike's coaching career has been it was on a straight line moving up. He was getting interviewed for the Alabama job to succeed Nick Saban, and he was just a handful of years removed from Memphis. The most adversity he had faced was COVID and the problems that came with that in the recruiting world. Other than that, it was success. And it was different degrees of success.
Right, see you, brother.
But it was an arrow just going up, up, and away, as you say hi to Eric McLean, who walks behind glad hands. They know what to do. Kiss the ring.
Sorry.
It's fine. This is the first. I'm meeting adversity right now, but I faced it, so it's okay. Yeah. He doesn't know what to do with it. I think that's what happened last year. He's like, holy crap, I've never seen anything like this. And you don't know what you don't know. This year, the question is it too far beyond repair that he can't fix it? Or has he flagged everything, brought in the types of transfers that mirror the 1.0 group of transfers that he brought in? You reset the culture, and you go and you move forward. That's the question here. Is it too late? I almost get that feeling from him that he he realized too late last year, and he's trying to be as proactive as possible while still picking up the pieces from 24, because they're not done picking up the pieces from last year. That's also part of the sense I get.
It's a process because he has to hope right now that this is enough to save his job, if we're being honest.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And then from there, you got to be able to take off again.
Right. Was it too late? Was it too late for my job, or was it just too late for 2024? I think that's what he's living through right now.
It will be a shame. Again, I see enough from Mike. The interactions with Mike are always interesting, and I feel like pretty genuine. Nobody's always genuine. Nobody's, every second of every day giving you a nugget, but he's largely here with us. He's largely understanding of the angst and frustration and the disappointment. I think he gets it. He's not one of these guys that has dug his feet in and it's him against the world. I've watched that happen with legends. I've watched that happen with guys that have basically taken the approach of, do you know who I am and what I've done? And you're going to question me because I had a bad year? Like, I've seen that play out here at Florida State across sports. And I've seen it play out with other coaches covering this league, covering college football. We've all watched it in the NFL when a legend on the sidelines begins to decline, and there becomes those moments in these press conferences where they get hit hard by a press who's not afraid, because it's Detroit, because it's New York, because it's Chicago, LA. And the moment that they've decided to declare war. Like, I'm not going to take it. You've never coached at this level. You've never played at the level I played at. You never had the successes I've had, and you're going to pepper me with these kinds of denigrations. He has not done that on the heels of 2-10. He hasn't. He's been really, I think, humble about it. That doesn't mean it's going to turn around. It doesn't mean that he's going to have the success that he has to have to keep his job. We're keeping an open mind about that, because Lord knows the season did happen. And there are a lot of people mad at him for that, and a lot of people who don't like Mike anymore and don't want him to be here anymore. I get that too, but he hasn't done the thing where it's like, well, screw these guys. He's thoughtful enough to want to get this turned around. And frankly, it's better for Florida State. It's better for us in this business, but it's better for us as a program if he can right this ship and this year becomes a stabilizer, and then somehow ratchet this back up to where he already had it, which is the shame of this whole thing, is that he pissed away what he had already built and ceded the state to our two chief rivals at a time where he owned and had them under his thumb. And that will forever be aggravating and disappointing and frustrating and hard to talk about without getting angry. However, it's where we're at. So let's just see what ends up happening.
Yeah, and then on the Tommy side, I was encouraged by that interview. I just got done saying the first hour, I'm not a huge fan of attitude.
Yeah.
I hope it starts fast, because if it doesn't, I'm not sure it's going to hold. But I have to say, in that interview, he seemed grounded in reality a little bit more than press clippings have read, and then even some other media appearances. I've wondered, man, is this guy connected to the earth, or does he think he's in this one place and everybody else is in this other place, and we don't share the same worldview, meaning the public and then what he thinks of what he is? I love the answers. I love the candidness. I like the fact that you asked it and he answered it. I don't care if I need to run or I need to pass. That's encouraging. Whatever it takes to help the team win. Because guys get ideas. And he did talk about how Bill O'Brien's offense helped him for the pros. I'm like, yeah, I don't care about that. This is Florida State in 2025. This is Florida State in 2025. You might have this other goal that you have, and that's wonderful.
Sure.
And I hope you achieve it. I'm sure Trey Jones feels that way about the golfers. He's like, yeah, y'all want to be on the PGA. I need you this week in Cabo.
Yeah.
We need to win the Cabo Intercollegiate. That's what I'm feeling about this season is you could have aspirations to do that or the other. But he did say today, if I need to run, if I need to pass, if I just need to play ball in order to win, good. And some of the other things he talked about relative to the Boston College thing. He said on the field was no problem. It was behind the scenes.
Well,
He was candid. It was candid and it was real. I liked it.
I did too. I felt better about it. I am, I have my doubts. I have my doubts whether this will work to where they need it to. But I think I've said repeatedly that despite Tommy's, overall ranking as a college quarterback, or where I have him ranked anyhow as a college quarterback, I have certainly allowed for the possibility that this is his very best season as a college football player, because he's in an offense that is directly catering to a unique skill set. One thing, when you do talk to people who've known him for a long time, and I talked to a couple people who remember him in high school, and we've talked to BC folks up here, they all say something similar, and they talk about him being tough. So he's a tough kid. He's going to have to be, Tom. He's going to have to be, because he's going to run the ball. And
Yeah.
He's going to get it hard by Alabama.
Better not turn that down. You better run the hell out of that ball.
Final hour of forthcoming. A couple interviews there, as I said before. Lee Sterling will join us. We'll have a chance to talk to a couple more Florida State players as well. Looking forward to it. Chef Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV.